welcome to this video. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this goal tracker layout that I built right here. So I created this for those types of goals that have several actions, several steps that you need to take, several tasks that you need to do to get them done. And I also included a lot of features and formulas, as many as I could, so I could teach them to you. So the way this works is, of course, you choose your goal, and then you add all of those actions that you need to take in order to reach that goal. I also added a space right here in which you select a start date from this calendar and you set an end date. And then this progress bar is going to move each day as you get closer to your end date. And today is March 24. So 23 days have progressed since I first started with this goal. If this was ending today, then this bar would be full. So this is progressing over time. Each day you will see this getting closer to the end. Then you have this progress bar right here that is going to move whenever you check these boxes. And as you can see, you have this scratching effect right here. You can also set a deadline for each of your tasks. You just double click and select a date. Automatically, you'll see how many days you have left. And you can also assign priorities to each of those tasks. And then so I could teach you an extra formula. I also added this section right here in which you double click on this very first date cell and you select any date that you want, and then your entire week will adapt automatically. So for example, if I wanted to see the week of the 26th, I just have to select that from that calendar. The rest of the days will adapt automatically, and as you can see, these tasks are being pulled automatically into their corresponding deadline from this table. So if I add this to March 26th, it's going to pop up here. March 27, it's going to pop up here automatically. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. And then today is March 24. And you can absolutely adapt this so it has a lot more rows. So let's get into it. I'm going to create a new sheet right here and I'm going to start over from scratch. And I'm going to call this tutorial. So let's start with this table right here, which is sort of the base for everything else. I always suggest that if you're following along, which I hope you are, you do everything in exactly the same cells that I'm doing it, just so if you run into any issue, our formulas should always look exactly the same. I'm going to start by creating a table from cell B6 all the way down to cell G21. So I'm going to come in here to cell B6 and all the way down to cell G21. So as you can see right here, whenever I selected that area, I'm seeing those cells that I mentioned before, B6 to G21. And I'm just going to create a black border there by clicking here. So I'm going to start by adding all the labels very quickly. So let's do done, task, category, deadline, priority, and days left. And then let's add the checkboxes right here. So let's select this entire group of cells and let's click on insert checkbox. Then we're gonna add the calendar feature. So as you can see, when I'm double clicking, nothing is happening. And the way you add this functionality right here is you're going to select all of these deadline cells and you're gonna click on data validation, and then you're gonna click on add rule. Then you're going to select from this drop down the is valid date option. And for me, I like to reject the input in case you're trying to enter anything that is not an actual date. And I also like to show a help text. So this is optional. These checkboxes are optional. And then you're going to click on done. So if you did it correctly, this is how it should look like. So this rule, this date is valid rule is getting applied to this area right here. And as you can see, once I hover, it sort of gets highlighted. And when I hover this one, that's the checkbox rule. So it also sort of gets highlighted right there. Now, if we did this properly, whenever you double click, you should see a calendar. So even though you're not seeing anything right here at the moment, you already have this feature included. So let's just select some dates just to keep them there. And then if you look at the priority column, you have a drop down right there with 3 options. And depending on the option you select, the drop-down is changing colors. So let's first build the drop-down options. So again, I'm going to select this area and I'm going to click on data validation. I have my previous 2 rules here and I'm going to add a new one. And by default, you're going to see these drop-down criteria. So that's what you're going to leave. And you're going to start by doing low, medium, and then you're going to add another item and you're gonna do high. So right now I'm not gonna assign the colors yet, just so I can show you how you can come back here and change them after you already created the drop down. And you have two options right here. So if you click on advanced options, you're gonna see again the ability to add a help text in case you're entering something that shouldn't go there. That's not one of these three options. You can either reject the input or show a warning, and you have three display styles right here. So you have chip, which is this one that you're looking at. You have arrow, which is what it used to look like before the Google Sheets update. And then you have plain text. I don't suggest plain text because you don't really know there's anything there. I still don't love the chip, so I'm just gonna keep the arrow one, but you can choose whichever you prefer. And I'm gonna click on done. So if you did this properly, you have these drop downs on every single one of these cells. I'm gonna close this. Right now, they are not changing color. So let's apply that formatting. I'm gonna click on any of these drop downs and I'm gonna click on this edit button right here. And that allows me to jump back into this sidebar that I was seeing while I was creating the drop down. And so now I can assign colors to this. So I can do this green color, I can do this yellow and this red, and you can also add other colors by clicking on this customize option right here. So you can just move this around and select different colors for the text and different colors for the background. So as you can see, as I'm moving this around, you're getting your preview over here. So I'm just gonna leave this basic green, yellow, and red, and I'm gonna click on done. And then I get asked immediately that question. So if you recall, I clicked on the edit button just on one drop down, but Google Sheets is smart enough to know that I maybe want to apply these to all the other 14 drop downs that are practically the same. So in this case, yeah, I want to do that. So I'm going to click apply to all. And now that rule got applied to every single one of my drop downs. Now, if you wanted this to be chips, all you have to do is go back to the edit button option, click on advanced options, select chip. This one is the only one that's going to change, but I will get asked if I want to apply that to the entire group of drop downs. So if you click on done and then click on apply to all, the chip display option is applied to my entire group of drop downs, but I don't love it. So I'm just gonna do magic Control-C and go back to this layout. I'm gonna make this column look prettier. So I'm gonna click on format, number, and then I'm gonna go into this custom date and time option, and I'm gonna select this one. This is a formatting that I want to apply to my dates. If you don't see one that you like, you can also build one yourself. So you can just delete everything over here and start selecting options. And for example, I can add this dash, and then I can do month, another dash, and then I can do year. And from these options, you can choose maybe month, it can be a number, it can be the full name. So you can play around with this. This is the one that I like, so it's the one that I'm gonna use. And I'm gonna click apply. So this looks a bit better and it's gonna be easier for you to follow. I'm gonna center it. And then today for me is March 24th, so I'm just gonna do the today formula over here just so you can keep this in mind. Now I'm gonna show you a trick. I already applied formatting to this cell, and if I want to apply that same formatting to this cell right here, I can just select the one that already has the formatting that I want. I can click on this paint format button. And as you can see, it's sort of highlighted in blue. That sort of activates it. And immediately after I do that, I'm gonna come into this cell and I'm gonna click. And if I do it properly, if I click immediately on that one, that same formatting is going to get applied. So that's a cool trick. And for me, this is today. I'm gonna delete that after. I just wanted you to keep that in mind. I'm gonna select a different date just so this happens in the future. And then you have this days left option, and this is where our very first formula comes in. So I'm gonna use the array formula that you see right here. And I've used this formula in tutorials before. It's a bit complicated to wrap your head around it at the beginning. So if you haven't used it before, I'm gonna go step by step and I'm gonna break it down. So I hope you can understand it better. Basically, this formula is applying the rule to this entire group of cells, but it's applying it just from this one cell. So if I were to delete this formula, everything is gone. And as you can see, if I select this cell, you see a formula, but if I select this cell, you just see the number. And if I delete it, I'm pressing delete on my keyboard, it always keeps on coming back because it's all controlled by this one cell. So I'm gonna break this down for you. If we were to do this cell by cell, we would do equals this date minus today, open and close parentheses, and then enter. So I have 6 days left, and I'm gonna center this entire thing just so it starts looking a bit better. So the easiest thing to do would be just have this formula over here and just drag it all the way down. And as you can see, I have a date here, and that gave me, I have 19 days left until this April 12th deadline, but then I get this horrible thing down here. So we need to make sure that this will only happen if there is an actual date here. If there is no date here, I want to see nothing. So I'm gonna delete all of them except for the first one. So I'm going to add something at the beginning. I'm gonna do if, open parentheses, and then I'm gonna do E7 is different from empty, and then comma. So that means that if E7 is different from empty, this is what's gonna happen. And if it's not different from empty, then I want nothing to happen. And then I'm gonna close parentheses. So you can pause the video and copy the formula if you want. But basically, if this is true, then this is what's happening. And if it's not true, then this is what's happening. And in this case, I want nothing to happen. So that's why I just left the comma and then nothing. So if I press enter, nothing changes here. But if I drag all the way down, I will only get a result if there is an actual deadline on these cells. In this case, every single one of these cells has its own formula. That happened because I just clicked on this circle right here and I dragged all the way down to the end of the table. And then each one of these got their own formula. Now, let's use array formula to do the same thing, but without the clicking and dragging. So I'm gonna delete all of these except the first one. And now I'm gonna take this formula and I'm gonna wrap it in array formula. Open parentheses and close parentheses. So make sure you do array formula. So when I press enter, nothing is happening below this one cell. To get it applied to the rest of the cells, you're gonna do this. So as you can see, this very last row is row 21. So I'm gonna come back into my formula. I'm gonna do colon right next to E7, and then I'm gonna enter E21. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Colon E21. And I'm gonna give you a minute just to make sure your formula looks exactly the same as mine. So you can pause the video. And what's happening here is I'm doing the exact same thing that I was doing before, just this time I'm applying these rules to the entire range. And as you can see, it's actually getting highlighted over here. So once I press enter, I get a result on every single row up until the very last row, as long as there is a deadline. And it's all being controlled from this one cell. So I know it's very weird looking. I also used it in the income and expense tracker tutorial. I'm gonna link that one below. So for me, it took a while to get used to it, so don't freak out if you haven't used it before. It's weird looking till this day. I still get confused sometimes. And if you don't like it, you can totally stick to each cell having its own formula. So I messed up the border right here, so I'm just gonna add that again. Now let's give this a little bit of formatting. So I'm just gonna click on this square right here, right above the number 1, and that selects the entire thing. So I'm just gonna center everything. I'm gonna come into this option and click on center. I'm gonna align it in the middle, and then I'm gonna use this text wrapping option right here. Those are my 3 favorite things that I always do to every single one of my spreadsheets. I've mentioned that before. So I'm gonna make this smaller. I'm gonna make this larger, make this larger, maybe a bit smaller, larger, smaller, just any way you like it is fine. And then maybe let's bold this and let's make this smaller. Now, if you look at this table, we have one extra feature that was created using conditional formatting, and it's this scratching effect. So the way I make that is I'm gonna come into my table and I'm gonna select this group of cells starting on the very first task all the way to the very last days left row. So that should be all the way from C7 to cell G21. And once you do that, you're gonna come into format, conditional formatting, and then on this format rules option, you are going to go all the way down to custom formula is, and then you're gonna create a rule. So we're gonna do equals, and then we're gonna use this $sign, and that will fix my rule to the column that I input after this. So that's gonna be column B. And then I'm gonna do 7 because my rule started on row 7. So if B7 equals true, I'm gonna click on this bucket, and I don't want the background color to change. I do want the text color to change, so maybe let's make it a dark gray. And then I'm gonna do this strike through option that's gonna create the scratching effect. So make sure it looks exactly like this, that your range looks exactly like this, and your format rule looks exactly like this. So I'm gonna click on done, and I'm going to check a few boxes, and I'm gonna add a task. So that's gonna be task 1, task 2, and task 3, and task 4, and task 5. I actually also like it to be italic, so if you want to go back and fix your formatting, you just have to select one of the cells that belongs to that group of cells that has this rule applied to it, and then you can click on format, conditional formatting, and it's going to show you this rule. And as you can see, as soon as I hover, the area that this rule is applied to is getting sort of highlighted with that green frame. So I'm going to click on there, and I'm also going to select this italic option, and then maybe I'm going to make my gray a bit lighter. Now, as I mentioned, this $sign is super important because this rule is going to be evaluated on every single cell. So we need to make sure that every single cell is always checking for column B, and it is not trying to adapt it in any other way. So if I were to delete the $sign and then click somewhere else, as you can see, the rule was no longer applied to any of these cells right here. And if I bring the $sign back, then the rule gets applied. So this is sort of forcing this rule to always check column B, because that's where our checkbox is. So now I'm gonna click on done, and then let's add this blue color over here. So if you want to know what that color is, I'm gonna show it on screen. So if you want this exact same color, this is a hex value that you can choose for that color. So all you have to do is you have to come into the paint bucket, and if you don't see any color that you like, you can add an extra one by clicking on this plus sign and adding this hex value on this input space right here. You can also just pick a different color by moving this around, but I like my blue one. And then I'm also gonna give it a white font. So there you have it. And this is basically all there is to this table right here. And then I'm gonna move this maybe below over here. So it's important you keep in mind that we have different dates. Whenever you're following this tutorial, you're gonna end up with different values over here. Just make sure it's correct depending on the day that you're actually on. If not, just go back and check the formulas. So let's add a border right here below. I like the border below as well, so just click on this option and add a bottom border. Now let's create the space for your actual goals. So that goes all the way from cell B2 to cell C4. So let's merge those, B2 to C4, and then you're going to click on this merge cells option. So this is where you're going to add your goal, and mine is going to be build my website. And then you have 3 labels over here. So as you may recall, you have your start date that you double click and you select it from this drop down. And then you have this progress bar that will move depending on how many days have progressed from your start date. Then you have your progress bar that moves whenever you check a box. And you also have these counters over here. There's 30 days between the start date and the end date, and 23 days have passed since the start date until today. So don't pick on the formulas, I'm going to explain them to you. And then 7 out of 7 tasks have been checked. And if you select them, you can see a counter right here showing you how many cells have actual information in them. So that's 7, and just 1 box is checked. So this is just a counter. So let's build this part. I'm going to start by adding the labels. So you're going to do start date and end date. Then you have days until end date, and then you have progress. And I actually like columns, so I'm gonna add them to the labels, and I'm gonna select these 3 cells and I'm gonna align them to the right. And so I have my start date and my end date, and for the end date I'm actually gonna use these 2 cells over here to make it look more symmetrical. So as you can see, this one is just one cell, but this is actually merged. So I'm gonna merge those. I'm just gonna select this area from F2 to G2, and I'm gonna click on merge cells. And then if I double click, nothing is happening. I need a date. So I'm gonna select my 2 cells, well, 3, but this one's merged. And I'm gonna click on data, data validation, add rule, and on criteria, I'm gonna select again is valid date. I'm gonna show a help text. I'm gonna reject the input, and I'm gonna click on done. So once I did that, it looks like nothing happened. I'm gonna close this, but now if I double click, I should get a calendar. So I'm gonna double click, and I'm gonna select a couple dates. Now, I don't like how they look. Right now, I'm not gonna use that trick I showed you before because this has an extra rule applied to it. This one has the scratching effect already applied to it. So if I were to do the same thing I showed you before, I'm also gonna bring the scratching effect into these cells, which I don't want that. So I'm just gonna do it manually again. And I'm gonna click on format, number, and since I used it before, it's already here as a quick selection, but you can also go back to custom date and time and select a different one and then click on apply, and now they look like this. I'm gonna center them, and I'm gonna align them in the middle again, and I'm also gonna bold them. So I'm gonna click on this bold option right here, and then I'm going to move this around just so they look a bit more the same size. Sort of like that. And the progress bars will be in these 2 cells. So I'm gonna merge this so I can create my progress bar on this entire space. And then I'm also gonna merge the 2 below so I can create my progress bar in this entire space as well. And as you may recall, this is where my counters will be. So let's divide everything with black borders. So you just click on the borders option, you select outer borders. And then I'm also gonna do it for this other area over here. So I'm just gonna click on borders, and I'm gonna select outer borders, and there you go. Now this is going to be a progress bar, and this is going to be a progress bar. So first, let's do a sort of skeleton of how that progress bar will look like. So you're gonna do equals SPARKLINE, and as you can see immediately, I get suggested the SPARKLINE formula. And if you click on this help button right here, you get this example. I want you to click on that because I have gotten messages that depending on your country and your language, the formatting is a bit different. So if you click on that help help button right there, and you see this example and it looks the same as mine, then just follow along. And if it doesn't, just follow that example to try to adapt what I'm doing to your own formatting. I'm not sure exactly what changes depending on the country, but I've gotten messages. So in case this isn't working exactly the same way for you, use this example to adapt what I'm doing. So I'm gonna do it manually at the beginning, and then we're gonna turn this dynamic. So let's pretend 23 days have passed. That's the very first thing that's gonna be in our formula, how many days have passed. And then I'm gonna add a comma, and then I'm going to open brackets. I'm gonna add a quotation mark, and I'm gonna do chart type. Make sure you are typing this exact word. And then I'm gonna close quotation. I'm gonna do a comma, open quotation, bar, close quotation. So as you can see, I'm just following this, which is exactly what we're looking for. So it's perfect. And then you're gonna do a colon, and then you're gonna open quotations, max, close quotations, comma, and this is asking for our max value. So right now we have what chart type we want, and that's bar, and then what's our max value gonna be. So for this example, manually, our max value is going to be 30. And then I'm going to close brackets, and then I'm going to close parentheses. And once your formula looks exactly like this, or your version of this, depending on your country, you should see a progress bar over here. Now, this isn't tied to anything since we just input these values manually. So let's have the dates be the same as the example. So we have March 1st and Friday 31. You can do this with whichever month you're on right now, so it's not confusing for you. So I'm gonna double click, and I'm gonna select first and then the last day of the month. So right now, nothing is changing. If I change this manually to maybe 10, then the progress bar decreases. So let's turn it dynamic. But before we do that, I want to create this counter over here. So as you can see, this counter is telling me how many days have passed since the start date until today. And the way you get that number is by doing equals today open and close parentheses, minus, and then you click on the start date. So that's the formula that's going to tell me how many days have passed since March 1st until the current day. Now, as you can see in my example, I added this slash in between. And the way you do that is you're gonna use the ampersand symbol, and that's gonna allow you to join together different values, either text or the result of a formula. In this case, that slash is text, so I'm gonna do open quotations, I'm gonna add a space, I'm gonna add my slash, I'm gonna add another space, and close quotations. And now I have my 23, my counter, and I have my slash. Now I'm missing the total number of days between the start date and the end date. So again, I'm gonna add an ampersand so I can join it with the result of my next formula. One of the ways, there's other ways, but one of the ways in which I can get the total number of days from my start date to my end date is by doing F2. So I'm just gonna click on F2, minus, and then I'm gonna click on E2, and then I'm gonna press enter. And as you can see, I have my counter ready right here. And I actually would like it to be italic, so I'm just gonna click there. And now I have the two formulas that I need for my progress bar over here. So the number I want here is 23, and the number I want here is 30, but I want that to be dynamic. So right now, if I move this around, nothing is happening with my progress bar. So I'm gonna take this formula, the today minus cell E2, which is resulting in my 23, as you can see over here. And I'm gonna copy it, so make sure you're not copying the ampersand. And then I'm gonna come into my progress bar formula. I'm gonna delete the 10, and I'm gonna paste. So we're halfway there. We're missing this 30. We have to make it dynamic as well. So we're gonna come into this formula again. And now we're gonna take the formula that results in the 30 that we created before, and we're gonna delete the 30, and we are going to paste. And then enter. And now my bar is dynamic. So today's March 24. So if today was my last day, then this would be completely full. So I'm gonna bring this back to March 31. And now I don't like this orange color right here. So I'm going to change the color. First, I'm gonna do it really easily, a random color. And then I'm gonna show you how to replace it with a more specific color. So I'm gonna do colon, and then I'm gonna open quotations, and I'm gonna input color 1. You have to do the 1, don't forget about it. And then close quotations, and then I'm gonna do a comma, and I'm gonna open quotations, and for now I'm just gonna type in green, close quotations, and just enter. And right now I have that green color right there, so we're gonna replace it, and I'm gonna show you how you can get a more customized color. So you can select any empty cell that you like, and you can come into this bucket right here, and you can select maybe a custom color. So you can just move this around. I'm gonna do a green one. So you're gonna move this around until you find the shade of green that you like. And once you do that, you can just copy this hex value, the entire thing, from the very first symbol to the very last symbol. You're gonna copy. You're gonna click on cancel just so this doesn't get painted that color. You're gonna come back into your formula, and you're gonna replace the green with the value that you copied. So you copied a hex value. Once I do that, if I press enter, my bar changes color. In this case, we didn't use percentages, we used numbers. So this is actually resulting in a 23, and this, my max value, is resulting dynamically on a 30. Now let's create our second progress bar. So again, we're gonna start with the counters. So what we're looking for is how many boxes have been checked and how many tasks I have in total. So I have 7 total tasks and 3 have been checked. So let's build that. And first, let's create the formula for the number of tasks that are checked. Now we need to make sure that we only take into consideration those checkboxes that actually have a task assigned to them. I don't want my progress bar to move if this is empty and I'm just checking this box. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do equals, and we're gonna do COUNTIFS with an S at the end. COUNTIFS is going to allow me to add multiple conditions. And then I'm gonna select my criteria range. So that's this area right here, the one with my tasks all the way from C7 to C21. So that's my range. Then I'm gonna do a criterion, and I'm gonna do open quotations, and I'm gonna input these symbols, and then close quotations. So what I'm saying here is if this range is not empty, and I need a second one, if this range is not empty and the box is checked. So I'm gonna do a comma, And now I need to select a different criteria range. So that would be this one. From B7 to B21, I'm going to do a comma again, and now I need my criterion, which will be true. So what I'm saying here is if this area is not empty and this area has a checkbox marked as true, I want you to add 1 to my counter. So if I press enter, I get 5 as a result. So I'm going to uncheck all of these boxes and I get 0. These ones are not being taken into consideration because I added this option right here. This is making sure that column C is not empty in order to take into consideration the checkbox. Let's check a couple boxes. And now we want to know we have 2 out of how many. So that's the next formula. So again, we're going to do ampersand, open quotations, space, slash, space, close quotations, and then enter. So I have my slash. I'm still missing my other counter, the one that lets me know how many tasks I have over here. So I'm gonna do ampersand, and then I'm gonna do COUNTIF without the S, and then I'm gonna select again this range. I'm gonna do a comma, and then I'm gonna open quotations. I'm gonna use these 2 symbols again, close quotations, and then close parentheses. So what I'm saying here is just add to my counter whenever this is not empty. So if I press enter, I get the number 5. So I have 5 tasks. If I were to add a new one, my counter would increase. And then whenever I check the boxes, my first counter increases. So now we're just missing our progress bar. And since we already did this first one, there's no reason to type everything all over again. We're just gonna copy this text. And we're gonna come down here and we're gonna paste it on this formula bar, or we can just paste it directly on the cell. I'm gonna do it on the formula bar. So I'm just gonna paste it there. I have my rule over here and I'm gonna replace my dynamic values with fixed values again. So I'm gonna do 2 and then I'm gonna replace this with maybe a 7. Let's do maybe 5 and 10. So it's more obvious that's in the middle. So let's do 5 and 10. So right now it's not dynamic. As you may recall, 10 is my maximum number and 5 is my progress. So now let's replace those 2 manual values with these formulas. So first, we're gonna take this COUNTIFs formula. Again, don't select the ampersand. We're just gonna copy. We're gonna come in here and we're gonna replace the 5 with that formula. We're gonna press enter. We're halfway there. Then we're gonna take our second formula, the one that is giving us the total number of tasks that I have in my table. I'm gonna copy it without the ampersand, and then I'm gonna paste it instead of the number 10. So this becomes my new maximum value. And now, whenever I check my boxes, that progress bar is moving all the way till the end. So we've already created 2 of the 3 tables. We already have this, and now we're gonna move on to making this. So as you may recall, what happens here is you double click on this cell, you select the very first day of the week, the rest of the week adapts automatically, and if there is a deadline in this table that belongs to each corresponding day, it will be automatically pulled into the table. So if I add this to March 26, it's popping up in March 26 automatically. So we're gonna make that next. So the very first thing we're gonna do is we're going to add the calendar feature into this cell. So I'm gonna come into cell I6. I'm gonna make column H a bit smaller. I'm gonna select cell I6, and again, you already know this, data validation, add rule, is valid date, show help text, reject input, and done. We've done this a couple times already in the tutorial. So if you double click, you get a calendar. So let's select March 26, and then we want the other 7 days to be created automatically. And the way we're gonna do that is we are going to select the next cell, which is cell J6, and then we're gonna do equals, and then we're gonna select our very first date, and we're just gonna do +1. And that's giving me March 27. So if I click on this circle right here and I keep on scrolling, I'm gonna keep on getting 1 day added from the previous date. So I get 26, 27, 28, 29. So I just want 7 of them. If you want more, you can totally add more, but if you want to follow the tutorial, I'm just doing 7, so I'm deleting the other ones. So I just kept 7, and as you can see, I have this cute formatting. No matter the date that I select, this is updating automatically. So let's add this formatting and create this weekday functionality on top. So I'm gonna select all of these dates right here, and I'm gonna go into format, number, and again I'm gonna choose one that I like. Since I'm gonna have the weekday directly above, I want my date format to not include it, so I'm just gonna choose this one and I'm gonna click on apply. Now I want these columns all to be the same size, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on column I and I'm going to select everything until column O. And when you do that, if you change the width of one column, you will change the width of all of the selected columns as well. And then to get the weekday directly above, it's actually very easy. It's not a formula, it's just playing around with the formatting, and I've done this before in other tutorials. I think I did it in the habit tracker. I'm gonna link that tutorial below. So what you do is equals, and then you select this cell right below. And right now you're just getting the exact same date. So the trick is in the formatting. You're gonna select the cell that's above, the one with the calendar. So you're gonna click on format, number, you're gonna come into custom date and time. You're gonna delete everything. And then you're gonna click on this arrow and you're gonna select day. And then you're gonna click on these 2 arrows right here. And you're gonna click on day as full name. And then you're gonna click on apply. So as you can see, it's just the exact same date. The only thing that it's doing is it's formatted so that it gives me the weekday as a full text. And now to apply that to the rest of the week, I'm just gonna click on the circle and I'm gonna drag all the way until cell 05 and I'm gonna release. So no matter what I choose, I'm gonna choose today, which is a Friday. Everything is updating automatically. So now let's give it some formatting. Let's wrap this in a table. So I'm gonna select everything from cell I5 to cell 021. I'm gonna click on borders. I'm gonna select the black color and outer borders. Now I'm going to show you another trick. So you're going to select everything from cell I5 to cell I21 and you're going to wrap that in outer borders as well. So it looks like this. And then you're going to select these 2 cells and you're going to wrap them as well in outer borders. So this is how it's going to end up looking. And then you're going to select a color for the full date. So I'm going to do this light magenta. And then you're going to select a color for the weekday. I'm going to do this dark magenta over here. And I want this to be bold with white text. And I actually want it to be a bit bigger. So the weekday, I'm going to choose font size 12. And then I'm gonna press enter. And as you can see, I already formatted my very first weekday, but I'm still missing the rest. So what you're gonna do, and this is a formatting trick, so you're gonna select everything from cell I5 to cell I21. Then you're gonna click on this paint format button that I showed you before. So you click on it and it sort of activates. So once it's activated, you're gonna, and watch this first before you follow along. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna click on this next day on the weekday cell, and you're gonna drag all the way without releasing, all the way until the very last day. And the moment I release, the formatting is gonna get applied to that entire area. It's a matter of clicking and dragging. If this method is not working for you, you can also do this. You can select this area, copy as you would normally copy, and then you are going to select the rest of the weekdays. You're going to right click, paste special, format only, and that does the exact same thing. So this depends on what's easiest for you. So now onto the actual formula. The formula we're gonna use, and I don't think I've used this in any tutorial before, it's the filter formula. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking to filter this table so that I only get tasks here that belong to this day. Now right now I have this on April, so I'm just gonna uncheck these boxes and I'm gonna choose maybe dates that belong in this range. So I'm gonna choose a couple due days. So right now nothing's happening, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna filter so they end up in their corresponding day. So you're gonna do equals filter and then open parentheses, and as soon as I get this question mark, I'm gonna click on it just so you can see what's going on. The very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the range that I want to filter. So I want this to be the thing that pops up on my columns. So I'm gonna select that, and then I'm gonna do comma. And then I'm gonna do my condition. So I only want tasks that belong to each corresponding day to appear in this table. So my condition is if this range if the dates on this range equal this date up here. And then I'm gonna close parentheses and see what happens. So you have your task number 2 over here. And if I added another task to March 24, they would all appear here. If I were to copy this formula onto the next cell, it's not gonna work properly, and I'm gonna tell you why. So I'm just gonna copy and paste. I'm gonna press enter so things highlight. So as you can see, the moment I copied the formula onto the very next column, everything is sort of shifted one column to the right. And the reason that happened is because I did not fix my formula to column C, which has the task, and column E, which has the deadline. So I'm gonna delete that. Column C has the task and column E has the deadline. But if I copy and paste, I no longer get column C and column E. I get it shifted one column. So the way you fix that is you're gonna come into this filter formula that we have on the very first day, and you're going to click on any space of the very first range, and you're gonna press F4 on your keyboard. And what that does is it's adding a $sign before each letter and before each number. I'm also gonna do it manually over here. So you add a $sign before the letter, a $sign before the number. $sign and $sign. And what this is doing is it's telling the formula to fix this range to those columns. And the reason I'm not doing that in here is because I actually do want this to shift from column I to column J to column K, depending on wherever I paste this formula. So if I press enter and I copy the formula and I paste it over here, it's showing that no filters were found because I don't have anything on March 25. If I copy and paste it over here, I'm getting my 2 tasks because I have 2 tasks over here. So I actually, if I don't have any tasks, I don't want this NA thing to show up there because it's not pretty. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add one more thing to the formula. I'm gonna add right at the beginning after the equals, I'm gonna do if error, open parentheses. So if this results in an error, do nothing. So I'm gonna do comma, and then I'm just gonna leave it empty and close parentheses, and then I'm gonna press enter. So nothing happens here, but once I copy and paste that on the next day, which didn't have any tasks assigned to them, I didn't get that NA. And if I were to add a task to March 25, it would show up properly. So again, I have the NA here because I haven't pasted the new formula, the one with the if error. So we're gonna copy, and then we're just gonna select every single first row of the rest of the days, and we're just gonna paste. And since I fixed my ranges, everything will work perfectly and it will adapt to the corresponding column. So as you can see, this is comparing to L6, which is this one, and then this one is comparing to M6, which is this one. So it's adapting because I didn't use the $signs to fix this part of the comparison. So in terms of formulas and functionalities, that's it. And if you want to stick around and you're not bored yet, I'm just gonna decorate it a bit more just so it looks like this one. So we have this week's deadlines on top. So I'm just gonna select 2 rows and 2 columns. So from cell I2 to J3, I'm gonna merge them and I'm gonna type in this week's deadlines. And then I'm gonna make that font size 14 maybe. And then I'm gonna make it bolder. I'm gonna give it a border. And I'm also gonna give it a background. So let's do maybe this light gray. Now this actually, I ended up putting it over here. So I'm just gonna copy it and paste it over here. Now this one was merged, but I'm going to unmerge it. I'm actually gonna make my columns a bit wider. So I'm just gonna select this again the way I taught you before, and I'm just gonna pull this a bit more. I'm gonna have this be a capital T. I'm gonna delete this over here. I'm gonna get rid of the grid lines. So I'm gonna do view, show, and then I'm gonna select grid lines, and then I'm gonna add my own grid lines with a bit lighter color. I'm gonna click on borders. I select my 3rd color, and then I'm gonna click on inner borders. And that just gives me lighter grid lines. And then I'm gonna do the same thing over here, just on the first one, because if not, I'm gonna get rid of the black ones as well. So if I were to do it like this, and I do inner borders, I get rid of the black ones. If you like it better, you can do that, but I'm just gonna select this very first one. I'm gonna do inner borders, and then the way I taught you, I'm going to select everything from the very first day. I'm gonna click on the paint format, and then I'm gonna click on the second day, and I'm gonna drag without releasing all the way to the last day, and that applies the same formatting. And then maybe this, I want it to be more of a handwritten font, so I'm just gonna choose maybe Comic Sans. I'm gonna make it a bit bigger. And then I'm missing some borders over here, so I'm just gonna select this area, and again I'm gonna select a light gray, and I'm gonna click on inner borders. Finally, I have all this space that I really don't need, so I'm just going to select these extra columns by clicking and dragging, then right click, delete columns. And then quick tip, I want to get rid of all of this down below, but I don't want to click and drag all the way down, so I'm just gonna click on one of the rows, and I'm gonna press Shift Command and then down arrow a couple times. So that's Command on the Mac. I think on Windows it's Shift Control, so you just click on this, Shift Control, down arrow, and that should select everything all the way down. You right click and then you delete rows. So I just deleted everything down below that I wasn't gonna use. Maybe we can give this light gray background and make the borders, the inner borders, be white, like this. So just select the white color, inner borders. And finally, I want these 3 rows to be a bit taller. So the same thing with columns. If you select multiple rows and you resize one, the others will resize as well. Just maybe this italic, and this was a darker gray font, and this one was italic. So yeah, that's it for this video. If you like this tutorial, if you learned something, please give it a thumbs up. If you still have questions about a specific formula, please let me know so I can include it on newer tutorials. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.